Hello everybody, Andy here from Glass Half Dead, the #1 Kill Team channel on the internet, unless you are aware of any other channel, even ones that aren't Kill Team. Okay, so today I want to talk about the Las Vegas Open for the Kill Team Championship 2025. This is also the end of the IC season. We're going to look at the rankings. I also put it into some sheets, and I'm just going to talk about not just the top 10 or anything, but also all of the faction spread, and then also a few changes that they made to the game to make it work, which I think is pretty interesting. So first things first, what is LVO? It's the Las Vegas Open. It's the end of the ITC tournament season. So it's quite possible that if you go to LVO, not only do you get to win that tournament, perhaps, but you might also get enough points in that particular tournament to put you to the top of the ITC, where I don't know what ITC stands for. I also don't care too much about ITC, but the ITC is a way to, throughout an entire year, grind up your rep, your rankings, etc., so that even if you have a bad showing at one tournament, you still kind of get a bit of acknowledgement, and obviously it's really there to encourage people to go and attend these things. Hypothetically, it could also be used to seed players. So if you have a higher ITC, you could become seed #1, seed #2, and then there could be a really big invitational for the ITC that does that. But nowhere does do that. So that's just like every other sport uses those kind of rankings to seed players, so that you don't have pure Swiss when you go to a tournament, because then you don't get a real round until round 3 or 4. But we don't do that because we're not a real sport or a game. There you go. Anyway, moving on. So let's get into it, shall we? First things first, I want to talk about. Let's talk about the changes to the rule set first. I think I'm going down the wrong way. So basically, I made a quick video about this last week. LVO extended their deadline for a list submission until quite late, until the day before, until like the 2nd of. They didn't require any list submission until you were there watching, until you're 5 minutes before the tournament, right? Which is fine. I'm definitely glad I wasn't put in that situation, because that's, as the tournament organizer, I mean, to decide, do you want to hold off for a data slate as long as possible, or you want to lock things in where you should, like 2 weeks early, as the 40k and Age of Sigmar competitions did. Yeah, just glad I didn't have to make that call. I think ultimately, gosh, you know, the day before is very late, but I think it's totally understandable why. But I don't think it's entirely fair on the players who were going there if you don't kind of let them know when you buy your ticket, hey, by the way, we think the game's in a bit of a state, so we're gonna hold off till the day before. And of course, people didn't know that's what they were going to do. So, for example, there were some international players, and they had to get on the plane to fly to LVO, expecting a balanced data slate that day. So whatever happened, you would be stuck with that team. People had to travel from all over the country as well. How many teams are you bringing with you? Are you taking everything you know how to play, or are you taking one team? Anyway, interesting decision. I think ultimately doesn't matter which way you go as long as people know. There you go. Let's have a quick look at the changes they made. So I heard that LVO, people just randomly DM me as soon as they did it. They said, LVO's dropped their own balance patch. I was like, oh my god, this is insane. What's going on? They've done a whole balance patch. I assumed, just because nobody said anything else, they just added me, Andy, look at this. That is not what happened. They did not completely change the game. They just did a few, honestly, these are practically erratas and clarifications, and they're things that, frankly, I would expect all of these to be in the eventual balance patch. So I want to quickly just go over what they are, because ultimately, when we go and look at rankings, not faction dispositions, how many brought what, not at all, that doesn't matter for this. Because again, people had to lock in their lists a while ago, before this was released by LVO. But for when it comes to who actually got the top 10, the top 20, this could have affected things. So Very quickly, cover and obscurement. Models cannot be obscured by terrain within 2 inches, even if it's also gaining cover from that terrain. There you go. That's basically what this means is, hey, do you want cover or do you want to be obscured? You will always pick obscured. That's always better. Cool, job done. But you don't get to have both unless that obscuring cover is over 2 inches from you. So, you know, if you're being shot and there's a wall here, and then all the way back here, you've got cover because they're doing a full board shot, you would get cover and obscured. But basically, if you're obscured and getting cover from the same piece of terrain, you no longer get it. I think this is a great decision. 100%. This should just be a core rule. I really support this. In fact, it even came up. I was watching the LVO stream that they did, the second to last round, and a Phobos player and a Warp Coven player were having a big debate about, do I get obscurity from this? And luckily this was in there, so it was an easy answer. We then get unique actions and universal actions. A model can perform each of the following actions once per turning point: a psychic action and a guard action. So basically, psychic actions are OP. There you go. Got done. And this was an issue when it comes to, I don't know what this was an issue for. I'm going to move on. The guard action. If you want more of a breakdown on why guard actions are broken, you need to go and check out other channels that can do a full breakdown of that. This is a good change. Again, this should just be a core rule, 100%. Yeah, there you go. The reason this is such an issue, obviously, is how elites work with Into the Dark, because that's where you can guard, and also messing around with, yeah, basically, it means that you can end up, like, shooting way more than you should with a very powerful model. Cool, so another great change, really like it. I actually have no idea what the psychic action change is for. I'm sure there's a reason. So, primary selection. Players must choose their primary ops. This is just a thing, you have to do it. There you go. Again, this is like a clarification, because I think Hand of the Archon want to get weird with stuff. Cool, you don't get to pass. Marker placement. Markers can only be placed where they fit on vantage and the kill zone floor. To stop players from placing markers on pillars. I don't know who was doing that, but fair enough. Okay. And then counteract. At the end of an action during a counteract, in which a model moves or is picked and picks up / replaced, in addition to all other restrictions, that model must end wholly within 2 inches of its original position. Again, I don't actually know what this was for. Presumably there's something that for a 1 AP action, you can then counteract to spring back. I would assume something from Warp Coven allows you to do that. Cool. I think a good core rule that should be updated for counteract is that you can only perform core actions. So that would mean you can't guard at all. And it would only be, you know, your 8 core actions. I think that makes total sense. Oh, and obviously still only 1 AP, so you couldn't fall back. We don't need to be doing mission actions. We could pick up, we could drop, but no mission actions, no opening doors, no closing doors, no counter. Counteract's not a thing, is it? No guard, etc. That's the word. I think that should just be a core thing. Excellent. But keep these in mind. Right. So just again, these are super light touches. This is good stuff. I like it. We then get to, just very quickly, I want to show you what the names are. I'm mainly going to be looking at just who brought what. I don't really care too much who won. But I will very, very quickly touch on the top 10, because I think that's quite interesting. And then the additions that the top 27 make. Why 27? Well, as you can see here, even though this was a 9-round tournament, there were so many players, which is obviously awesome to see, that every single player had at least one loss. Nobody went undefeated. That's interesting. That means that when you come to the final scores, it's actually the scores that matter. I don't know how this was decided. I don't know if it was straight VP, if it was strength of schedule, no clue at all. There you go. I will say I was 100% rooting for Chris Backey here from Bats. His Blades of Cain, in my opinion, not that my opinion matters, he was the winner. He was the winner of the tournament, as he's the guy that went undefeated up until the last round, where he played Sammy. Sammy there being Warp Coven, and then Sammy beat him in the last round. Except Sammy had taken a loss in his very first round. So when I was looking at the stats, I actually didn't realise that Sammy was actually still in the running at all to win. But of course, when it turned out that nobody had 100% wins, it then became anyone that only had one dropped game would win. Interesting to note that, ignore Sammy, he lost to somebody else in the tournament, but number 2, number 3, number 4, Jimmy, Orion, and Chris. Jimmy lost to Orion, Orion lost to Chris, and then Chris lost to Sammy. There you go. So quite amusing. That's not how the tournaments have to work out, by the way. It's just a weird quirk. The top 3, 2, 3, 4 all lost to the guy below them. There you go. Or to the guy above them. There you go. Quite interesting. Yeah, cool. Okay, with that done, let's go and check out this here. So the reason I only talked about the top 4 there, sorry, is because when you then get down to 5, you see that's when you get to 2 losses. And then down to 10 is where you have 2 losses. Below that, you've gone into 3 losses, etc. Cool. This is way too zoomed in. Let's zoom out. Thank you. Lovely. So I just very quickly put this together for you, for us, obviously, for us, Team Kill Team. This is the breakdown of all 138 players in LVO. There were 158, but 20 of those were the narrative, who I have not counted. So there you go, 138 players. Far and away the most players was Plague Marines, with 15. Where are Plague Marines on this? I can't even find them. 10.9% then. I think we had Legionary, Legionary, and then Nemesis Claw and Angels of Death and Phobos were all tied. Oh, and Void Dancer Troop, sorry. Now keep in mind that everything there that I just mentioned is an elite team. That's going to be relevant soon when we look at the top teams that won this. Can we take away anything interesting from this? Yes, we can. Not only were all of the top 6 teams taken, elite teams, not just Marine teams, elite teams. Nobody, not a single person in 138 players took Death Corps, Exaction Squad, Navy Breachers, Scouts, Chaos Cult, Belgor Ravagers, Kroot, or Pathfinders. There you go. Which is crazy, because if you think about Worlds, which happened a few months ago, there were a remarkable amount of Kroot that nobody really saw coming, because we thought, they weren't, they sucked last edition, but then there were like 3 Kroot at Worlds, which made no sense, so we thought maybe there was some secret sauce there. But then nobody at all takes into LVO, which is mad. I'm also surprised to not see any Scouts. I have to assume that's a really good data point, because Scouts ultimately are Marines and people love Marines. So to see no Scouts must mean they're in a really bad spot, gameplay-wise, and whoever would have taken Scouts chose not to, even if they're a Scout lover, which is, I think, interesting for the GW guys to note. I think that everybody knows that Scouts kind of suck at the moment, but again, it's good to see it confirmed in stats of just how much they're sucking, because I like to think that even if somebody takes a faction and they go 0-0-0, all 9 losses in this tournament, somebody still wanted to play them. They were still good enough to have a go, or they were fun enough to have a go. I really feel that if nobody takes you, it's a really bad sign. But then you do have other instances where Exaction Squad last weekend, like 3 Exaction Squad players won, which was crazy. Death Corps, they're apparently sucking big time at the moment, so not surprised to see them. Pathfinders, same, big issues. But then Chaos Cult also suck. Belgor Ravagers, why aren't they there? Belgor, not only did they win a tournament last weekend, a relatively large tournament, they're just obviously good, right? Like, they're almost Marine levels of good in regards to their durability. So it's really surprising to not see any Felgor, because people know they're strong, but they're not there. There you go. Cool. Interesting. So yeah, when it comes to me and what I look for in a tournament stat kind of pie, a stat pie, if you will, a pie stat, I'm always looking for the low taken teams, as I feel it can, tell us a little bit about the game, more than just what's there and how can we read into it, that sort of thing. But honestly, this is all over the shop. Because if you put this next to a tier list, yes, lots of the bottom tiers are just not taken. That kind of tells us one thing. But Exaction and Felgor are right up at the top. Where are they? Very strange. Why is nobody playing them? Likewise, if we look at Warp Coven, there's only 6. Warp Coven are pretty much unchallenged at the top of the game as being the best possible team from what us scrubs can see, right? I couldn't win a tournament with Warp Coven. I'd get smashed. I'd make everybody else in that tournament feel great because they would get brilliant, easy wins against me playing Warp Coven. But obviously, if you go into this tournament and you're willing to put in the work, they're a very strong team. And they're definitely a team that can go straight to the top, arguably more so than any other team in the game right now. So to see only 6 people taking them, really peculiar, actually. There you go. Cool. So let's have a quick look at the top 10. In my own time, or in tonight's stream, feel free to drop in and say hi to me. I will be looking at these stats again because it's always good fun. But if we look at the top 10 numbers, okay? Here we go. So top 10. Yeah, I don't know. What can we look at from the top 10? So, so we've got 3 Warp Coven, Plague Marines. Yeah, Nemesis Claw. So 60% of the top 10, that means 6 of them, but 60% sounds better, are Marines. 80% are Elites / APL 3. Does that mean something by any chance? Is it possible that APL 3 is a bit of an issue? Why is APL 3? Why are elite teams a bit of an issue? Is it possibly because a lot of our TAC Ops now have moved to being action-based things? And you need to kill stuff, and naturally to be a viable elite team, you've got to be quite killy per model, and you have the extra actions to do it. You have the extra speed so you can't hide. Or so your opponent can't hide. And there are now fewer objectives. If you recall, in the last edition, we were playing 6 objective missions, where basically it was very rough for elites, because you had to just straight up lose, what is it, 20% of your team strength, because they have to just sit on a back objective. And then you hope that your opponent goes to one of the 2 objectives you've put more models on. In this one, that just doesn't exist. You have to deal with the entire elite team when you're facing them. Whereas before, they just straight up lost an octave, generally. And obviously, if you're thinking about elite teams, you're also going to get a lot of counteract, which means, yes, you're just naturally killier. You naturally can deal more damage. You have more actions to deal more damage. But not just you have that. You have additional actions that aren't represented on the datasheet because they vary depending on what team you're going into. If you're a Horde team going into a 6 model elite team, they're straight up getting 6 extra actions. Mad. Like, that's legit crazy. They have another half team again. Mad. And there's nowhere to hide with an elite team. You're going to have people that remove obscuring, remove seek light, that are melee monsters. And hey, just because I'm out of activations doesn't mean I can't kill you more. It's like, okay. Likewise, obviously it's really easy to look at Marines, but we also have to keep in mind that just technically anything APL 3 is an elite team. I class elite as up to 8 models, so that does include Hyrotech, who aren't APL 3. They're a weird elite team, I do admit that. But I do class Wrecker Crew, I do class all of the elves as well, sorry. Let's say the words Blades of Cain and Void Dancers, who also made it to the top 10. That's really interesting. If we were to expand the top 10 out, okay, because, sorry, we should point out the 2 teams that were not elite teams in the top 10 were Blooded and Inquisitorial Agents. So, I don't know, man. I'm not a Blooded or Inquisitorial Agents player, so I can't really say much to them, but it's awesome to see Blooded up there. Nobody's really done too much with them this edition, so that's cool. And Inquisitorial Agents, everybody knows they're top tier. They're not my vibe, so I don't really pay much attention to them, but it's good to know they're there. Cool. If we extend out another 10 places, so we go from instead of top 10 to top 20, how does what I just say pan out? We have 9 more elites. You might be wondering, what's the non-elite model faction that got added? What's the one non-elite model? The one non-elite faction that made it to the top 20 that didn't make it to the top 10? Corsairs. Who are pseudo-elite. Yeah, that's right. APL 2.5, because they always get a free dash. Yeah. Anyway, that's cool. That's nice to know. It's possible that GW needs to look a little bit into how they're treating Counteract and the model spread in this edition, etc., etc. However, I will say I've just come off the back of two weekends, Sunday then a Saturday, where I played Blades of Cain and then I played Vespids, and I am not a tournament player. So firstly, nine games over what it was 2-3 days is a mad amount of games. If I had done that, I would be off kill team. I would be burned out for like 6 months, easy. I couldn't think of the game without being sick if I had to play it that much. I'm just not that kind of guy. That's not the player I want to be. I don't have the stamina. I don't have the endurance. I don't have the masculine urge to... Oh, it's not masculine, is it? It's autism. I don't have the autistic urge to play anything that often, right? Great to those that do. You know, they can do something I can't do at all. It's really awesome. I played Blades of Cain, and I grinded out more games than I have for anything else before. And I never want to look at Blades of Cain again. So I'm done with that, right? Vespids I took because I thought, I don't care. So I'm happy to just roll dice, and hey, I know that Vespid are good if I roll all 6s. Let's see what happens there. So these people here doing this are really strong. Big props to them. I will say, if you've never been to a tournament, despite what I've just said, you should go to a tournament. Going to a tournament is really good fun. I really enjoy it because you just get to meet new people, play new games, play against new people, new factions, I mean. And it's genuinely very enjoyable. Minor note, I'd probably recommend your first tournament be a 3-day, God, don't do that. Be a 3-round tournament. It's just a little bit more casual, a little bit easier on the stress. A 4-rounder can be quite the drain. Certainly I get to the 4th round, I'm like, man, I really hope I've got the bye this round. I'm ready to go. So consider that for yourself. But yes, I will happily confirm that playing in tournaments is good fun. And you should definitely do it, because it is fun. There you go. So having done Blades of Cain 1 week, Vespids the next week, I'm happy to say that I'm now going into my elite era myself. Now you might think, Andy, you've just looked at those stats, and we know you. You hate playing the top teams. You can't play elites now. You're right. You're right. I agree, it's bad, but the thing is, I'm a bad player. It doesn't matter what I play, I'm not going to be a top 10. I'm going to suck. If I get top 50%, I've had an amazing time. Like, I've aced some dice rolls, let's be clear. So it is ultimately always down to the player. We have many Warp Coven, the absolute best team in the game, that didn't come top 50%. Sorry, that's a lie. I meant that as a bit of a, hey, it's all good, but it's not, sorry. Because I actually checked this. All of the Warp Coven are in the top 30, I think. 3 of them, half of them, are in the top 10. No, oh no, I've depressed myself, I've got to go. Guys, playing tournaments is good, just don't fucking play Warp Coven, Jesus Christ.